Good evening, everyone. Great to see a packed house tonight. My name is Michael Taylor. I am the Chief Curator and Deputy Director for Art and Education here at VMFA, and it really gives me tremendous pleasure to welcome you. Tonight's program it's a double thing. It's a conversation, but it's also a participatory ceremony, as we're going to burn those wishes, and it's going to be wonderful. We are in the final month of Tsherin Sherpa Spirits, VMFA's groundbreaking exhibition of the Artist Spirits series. It closes on October 16th, so you always hear me say this. If you've seen it, go see it again. If you haven't seen it, you're in for a treat. This is a truly groundbreaking exhibition, Tsherin's first major museum show, and it comes in a year where Tsherin Sherpa is rapidly becoming a global contemporary art phenomenon, a star. He is the first artist to represent Nepal at the Venice Biennale, which is still on, and we're just so proud to have this exhibition brilliantly curated by Dr. John Henry Rice, the Carpenter Curator of South Asian Art. And tonight, we are going to hear a conversation between John Henry and Tsherin. And one thing I wanted to say is, until recently, we had 2 paintings that the museum owned by Tsherin in the exhibition. We now have 3. We bought thanks to John Henry, who presented to the trustees the largest painting and really the culmination of the exhibition, that 4-panel spirits. So the museum has acquired it, and just wanted to congratulate Tsherin on again having another work. There's even a Sherpa painting up on the 3rd floor in a special display of our Himalayan, really world-class Himalayan collection. So do go check that out too. So as I said, this evening the artist and the exhibition's curator, Dr. John Henry Rice, will discuss a centerpiece of the exhibition, the sculptural installation, Wish-Fulfilling Tree, examining some of the artist's inspirations and intentions for the piece, which he describes as a therapeutic work that promotes healing. Following their conversation, we will all gather outside on the Pawley Terrace of the Robin Sculpture Garden to take part in the ceremonial disposal of the wishes that visitors have been adding to the installation throughout the exhibition. So enough from me. Please join me in welcoming Tsherin Sherpa and Dr. John Henry Rice to the stage.
Thank you, Michael. Yes, very much. And everyone, Tsherin Sherpa. Michael gave you the lay of the land. You'll hear a bit from us. I'll briefly just introduce Tsherin and the exhibition for the few of you who may not have seen it, and then we'll zero in on this one particular sculptural installation that's in the show, which will bring us to the wishes. For those of you who don't know, Tsherin is ethnically Tibetan, born in Nepal, grew up in Kathmandu studying traditional Tibetan Thangka painting, Tibetan scroll painting, under his father, Master Urgen Dorje. Really well-known and well-respected Thangka painter there in Kathmandu. Eventually moved to California in the late 90s, and for his first decade in California continued to do traditional work. And so the painting at the top here is really your most magnificent, at least that I've seen, traditional style work. But then after about that decade, around 2008, really Tsherin makes this jump to non-traditional work in a lot of different modes. Three of those sort of main examples from 3 of his main sort of bodies, corpora of work are shown here at the bottom. The one on the left is the one on the 3rd floor, if you want to make it up there. But this show we're calling a focused mid-career survey. So it attempts to track really the course and development of Tsering's contemporary career, that is from 2008 forward. Not by trying to look at everything that he produced, but by looking at one of these important series. In fact, what, Tsherin, you call your most personal series, the so-called Spirit series. So the painting here in the middle is an example of early work in the Spirit series. And so the show tracks both the development of this series and alongside sort of tracks developments and sort of the evolution of Tsering's career at the same time. And most of you probably already know all of that. So hopefully you've seen the show, and we'll see it about 14 more times in the next month. But tonight we're here to talk about one of the sort of key nodes in the exhibition, the hammered repoussé copper sculptural installation, wish-fulfilling tree that you see here in the gallery. And now you've heard me. Okay, Tsherin. Yeah. Can you tell us, how this work, how did this happen?
Yeah, thank you, John. So in 2015, there was a major earthquake that occurred in Nepal, and I was in California, and I found out it was quite a severe, devastating experience for people in Nepal. And because my family is also there, especially my father, so I immediately rushed to Nepal after a few months to understand, to see if they were hurt or anything like that. That sort of also gave me the opportunity to be there in Nepal for some time, because earlier, whenever I would visit Nepal, it would be for a couple of weeks or 3 weeks at the most, and I would rush back to California. But this time, I ended up staying there for a few months. And also, my father happens to be living in an area where there is a large Buddhist monument. I grew up seeing that monument, and this was like a place for a sanctuary, or even a place to put your, faith and hopes into. So it's called Bodhanath Stupa in Kathmandu, and the structure was completely cracked due to the earthquake, and there were lots of scaffolds all around. And this was something like a very different experience for me to see that for the first time, as if the monument itself was injured. And then during my stay there, I also had conversation with my dad, and we were talking about if we have enough artists who can, traditionally trained artists who can actually restore these monuments that were destroyed during the earthquake. I was also supposed to have an exhibition in Hong Kong the following year, and I was making some preparations for that. So I ended up renting a small space in the outskirts of Bodhanath. And every morning in that area, I would hear metal clanking sound from 6 or 7 in the morning. So then I just asked one of my assistant friend, what this is, and he said oh, these are repoussé artists, and they're all living in that area. So I ended up walking to the place just to see what they're doing, and found out they were creating these repoussé mandalas, which are actually it's kind of like how would you call this?
You'd call it that.
Yeah.
This sort of.
Yeah,
Ritual.
this is more like the traditional design of the mandala. So this is for like offering to the deities or teachers, symbolic of a universe that you're offering to. So I saw that and I was very curious, like, and I started befriending the artist, and then he was telling me all the difficult situation that he as an artist, like repose artist, was facing in Nepal due to the commodification of all the like religious objects for like, you know, catering it to the tourists and then degrading all the quality, etc. So, and I just asked him, like, I didn't know how to help him in some ways because I saw his craftsmanship was really, really fantastic, and he's like the third generation repose artist within the family. So I just commissioned him a traditional mandala in the beginning, and later it just occurred to me, maybe I can create some form of like a work that can be in response to the earthquake experience. And so I came up with a design, like I wanted to extend a little bit more layers on the mandala, and with a stand, and then also because I was traveling around in that like destructed areas by the earthquake and found many objects that were like broken objects from homes, you know, I started collecting them. There's a place in the outskirts of Bodha, there's like a flat area where there were quite a few people, I think 300 home, like families or something like that, were in temporary shelter because their houses were destroyed and they didn't have a place to live in, so they had this temporary shelter like tents. And we also went around, documented all of those process, met with the people, started talking with them, and asked them like what their wishes were, just randomly, because I wasn't sure like what I was going to do with all of these things. And they told me that their main wish was that the government would release the fund that had come from different parts of the world to support the people in Nepal. And I think the government had like some, you know, it wasn't, those funds weren't released and these people were still living in shelters. So then I thought like maybe I'll create a work, an installation piece, which actually responds to these people's wishes and people who suffered during the earthquake. And then I gave a design to the repose artist, and we created this piece.
And it's really wonderful. I'll just back up a few slides to show you, the rubble.
Yeah.
So it's not necessary that one understand that really that the top 4 layers and the finial on top is a traditional ritual object, a so-called offering mandala. Whether one knows that or not, I think one gets the basic idea when one sees this, that this is an image of growth and order emerging from destruction. I think almost anyone would get that. And originally, in fact, the slide on the top right was the first installation of this in Hong Kong. Originally, that rubble, like Tsherin said, was taken from the earthquake. But each place that this has traveled and been reinstalled, the rubble is local. So this idea of order emerging from destruction is universal, applicable to anywhere. So these are just some examples. This is, on the upper left is here when Tsherin was assembling the rubble in February. The Rubin Museum, who actually now owns this piece, is lower right. And then another installation in Kathmandu on the right, and the Rubin on the left. Or at least this is one of the ways that I understand, Tsherin, your work, is you're always borrowing elements from the tradition.
Yes.
And then doing your own thing and your own elaboration. So it's like that top part is the traditional object, and then it goes on from there. So the top 4 layers have traditional auspicious symbols around them, but the bottom 3 layers have your spirit figure with this little double peace sign here. And thank goodness the spirit figures are on there, else I wouldn't have had an excuse to include this piece in the show. Did you, formally speaking, did you have any other sort of formal inspirations for this piece?
Yeah. So when we were talking about...
I'm trying to set them up.
So when I said it needed to be something that fulfills wishes. And I was already here in America for a big chunk of years. And every time I would visit my American friends, we would be there for Christmas celebrations, etc. So this Christmas tree with all these gifts is kind of sort of like a tree that fulfills your wishes to some extent.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I needed to borrow. I actually borrowed the shape of the Christmas tree. Yeah. So.
Yeah. I'm good. We got a few chuckles out there. But this idea, and yes, you're right. I guess the Christmas tree is one of probably many all around the world, ideas about wish granting trees. But there is a very early Indic idea that then spreads over the whole sort of Indic influenced world of the Kalpavriksha, literally the wish fulfilling tree, and these are just some examples of how that plays out in various places and times. But there is this tradition of this wish fulfilling tree that
yes.
And yeah. So you mentioned how originally this functioned. So now turning from form to function, how you originally intended it to function with the signed Nepalese banknotes stuffed inside the hollow layers. But that, like the rubble, has changed.
Yes.
From venue to venue, place and time.
Exactly.
Here are some examples.
Yeah. So the first one, actually, the one shown in Hong Kong, had all the these people that I was documenting in the temporary shelter. I took photograph of them, exchanging. I would make them actually sign a banknote as a wish, and then we put these banknotes inside the mandala, the wish-fulfilling tree itself. But later on, because we were having difficulty transferring this currency, which is from one country to another, and I was participating for Kathmandu Triennale in Kathmandu, and I needed to show this installation again, and I wanted it to be more interactive the second time around. So then during the Triennale, the visitors would come, and then we had 5 rupee coins, which was stacked on a pedestal, and they would just take this and throw it and make a wish onto the...
Right. And in the label, I mentioned this, and I wrote that visitors were invited to place the coins in the installation, because I didn't want anybody to get any ideas here about throwing stuff at a sculpture, that we've borrowed from another museum. And then the latest iteration, or the latest sort of version of this interactive wish fulfilling has happened here, right?
Yes.
And again, I think most of you know about it. In the background of this shot, you see the tables that we have set up with little slips of paper and pencils, which we've invited people, of course, to write their own wishes on and deposit them in our little offertory box back here. And periodically, our art handlers have transferred those from the box into the interior of the sculptures. So I've got some pictures of some of those transfers. This sort of is intended to run in order here, but we're working our way from the bottom to the top, and till it's all put together. And today, a few of you were there at 3 o'clock. Our art handlers again took everything out, and the few there are some remaining wishes that have accumulated since these things were installed and now have been taken out, and we actually put those in. So there are some in there, but it's mostly empty now. And of course, there's a month left in the run of the show, and they will continue to accumulate. And those remaining wishes will be dispersed similarly to what we hope to do with these today. But here's a picture a couple hours ago of those wishes coming out and initially put in a big bag from Panera Bread, I believe. And very reverently transported to the educators, and I then put them in these cute little bags that we are we're going to take outside, and we're going to ceremonially disperse these, hopefully, depending on the wind conditions. Yeah. Truly, we'll see how this goes. This will be a our buildings and grounds people are a little concerned about the wind. Tsherin was there at the meeting. He knows they're actually really concerned. But we will invite you and ask you to grab one of these bags on your way out. There are not enough for everybody, so be very kind with each other, and we will go out there. But Tsherin, I want you in the last couple of minutes we've got here to tell us a little bit about how you imagine this. What are we doing here?
Yeah. So again, I wanted to borrow this idea from the traditional context. In growing up in a traditional Buddhist family in Nepal, what I have always observed and seen is that we have these prayer flags that we hang like all over houses, like sacred sites, etc. And at some point these prayer flags are like worn out, and then you need to replace them with the new ones. At that time, so the older prayer flags we just don't dispose them or something, but we believe that by dispersing them through fire, we are releasing these wishes into the universe or cosmos. So. And I wanted to borrow that idea into this wish.
It makes total sense. The way that these prayer flags work before they're worn out is they have printed prayers on them, and the idea is that the wind multiplies those and carries them around. And so this is an extension of that, is that they're further dispersed by the fire and the smoke. And it's not just prayer flags that there's a lot of burning and smoke involved in Tibetan Buddhist practice, and so other offerings, especially juniper, and even biscuits, are similarly sort of offered. So that's the general idea of our newfangled ritual. that we are going to try. And I think before we go out, we have time for any questions, hopefully to Tsherin. But if anyone is have a burning question.
Burning question.
I don't know.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My question is, since you've done this in more than one place, are you working with the same Repoussé artists to make new ones each time, or is it always the same one, the mandala?
Actually, this is the same Repoussé work that we created. And first it was traveling to different places. And later it was acquired by the Rubin Museum of Art in New York. And the idea also was, there was another thing involved, which is I wanted to somehow provide exposure to the traditional craftsmanship and share it with the world and see if this will somehow benefit their practices. Because in Nepal, almost all the traditional works are categorized as souvenirs, unfortunately. So the cultural context is also disappearing. Even within the community, the support system is not there. And so how do we preserve this tradition was a big question for me. And by collaborating with this artist, I had the opportunity to show his, one thing I made sure was, like, whenever I collaborate with any artist, I make sure to credit them in the work. So it's not just my work, but it's like, in collaboration with this particular artist. And that somehow is like a little bit helping them with visibility and with also acknowledgement. And for example, Rajan Shah that I work with right now is getting more commissions to work for different monasteries, etc. So it's just trying to see if there's any way to provide that exposure. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, we're good.
I'm an anthropologist, and so I really appreciated your looking at how the gods would be affected by Western civilization, exposure to acculturation, and all the things that you've been through personally, and I thought that was a wonderful perspective on your part. But the question I have about the mandala is at the base of it, and most of your work has human form, or spiritual form, there were animals all around it.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, my interpretation is that we're all animals and that this is the foundation of human life is animal life.
Yeah.
But I'd like to hear your perspective on why you chose to show animals at the base of it.
Okay, yeah, so...
I took out that slide.
Yeah.
I was about...
So we have a tradition that we use the lunar calendar. And each lunar calendar is associated with an animal figure. So I chose the 12, because this was about the people's wishes, and I wanted to depict the lunar calendar symbols to represent like all people. Yeah, so the zodiac signs. So, yeah.
It's also a sly reference to an important sculptural work by Ai Weiwei. But like all of Tsherin's work, there's sort of layers and layers and layers of meaning.
What did the traditional mandala artists think of your twist on it?
Actually, I think the form has always slightly changed over centuries. And even though I don't think of it like a very, in a religious context, but it's like we as human, we come up with different culture, traditions to somehow either, how do you say, respond to certain calamities like earthquake, or create a culture to, it's like a therapy through which we believe that certain healing will occur, So it's kind of like that. So I haven't really come across any comments yet. And it was fun, like in Kathmandu, there were many Buddhist monks, children were also interacting with this work. So, yeah.
There's a great piece of video that I've seen from the Triennale when people were throwing the coins of Tsering's father coming to see this work, and there's a very nice documentary about Tsering that was world premiered here in May or something. And I had heard this story that it was at that time that Tsering's father, the traditional artist, finally sort of got what Tsering was doing. That there was some trepidation, for years. So I'd heard that story, and then I saw this clip of film, and you can see that he sort of walks in like, what's this going to be all about? and then he's like a boy, and it's suddenly it's like I mean, I'm sure I'm reading too much of it into it, but it's like all that sort of tension just sort of dropped off, and it's Tsering has told me that it was from there forward that his dad really was supportive of your contemporary work. Anyway, it's a good film. It's called Above and Below.
Hi, I have a question about the placement of the rubble and if the intentionality behind that, and if you place it in a way that it contrasts the kind of circular motion of the mandala, and if that intentionality changes depending on the city and the rubble that you're using.
Yeah. In terms of the shape, like it may change depending on the space we have. As far as the rubble is concerned, like the first one, because I actually wanted to use the local rubble from Nepal to respond to the earthquake. But later on, it was like, because this work was traveling, and I wanted to make it more localized wherever it travels. So in Hong Kong, we used the local rubble, and somewhat like sometimes related to some history wherever there's a destruction that has taken place, and maybe it's renewing its, I don't know how you say that. It's a renewal of that. Yeah.
Well, I will say that Tsering's very intentional. So Tsering showed up with purpose, intentionally wanted to come in the sort of last couple days of our installation. So there were two works in particular that he wanted to be involved in, and one was that big 4-panel painting that had never been hung before. He wanted to be there to hang it for the first time. And the other was to do the rubble. And it was really cool to watch. I had collected all sorts of stuff. And there's interesting rubble there, by the way. I mean, some of it's not interesting. Some of it, my daughter broke up in my driveway, some concrete blocks. But there's material here from the museum. There's material from various neighborhoods around the city, and the most interesting material is from Monument Avenue. And there are pieces of the Lee Monument in that. But it's and again, I'm reading too much in. But it's almost like he went into this trance, and working with the materials that he had, and very intentionally placing things this way and that. So. Definitely not willy-nilly.
I was actually going to speak on the rubble as well, and the fact that I love the idea of healing through rubble. And I was wondering, you mentioned now that you did the collecting of a lot of the rubble here, but in terms of, in your experience collecting rubble in some of the places where you collected, did that open up deeper conversations that led to more healing through the collection of the rubble?
Absolutely. So the first time when I actually did that in Nepal, the first actually one, I collected many of the broken pieces from broken homes. They were very kind enough, many of the people were, and it was strongly related with their family memories, this, that, and then so all of these objects were very, very meaningful to all of these people. Once I transported that, I didn't know at that time that this exhibition, this sculpture is going to travel around. So I was just sending it to Hong Kong. And because some of these objects were quite old, and taking it back and forth is going to be so difficult. So then the second time around, I showed the piece in China, near the Gobi Desert. And over there, I actually went myself and collected these rubbles and spoke to the people, local people. So definitely, it actually adds a lot of deeper meaning and conversation. Thank you.
Okay, so we need to go burn some stuff. So yeah, the little bags are out on tables out here, and we'll go upstairs and walk through the atrium and out to the former Confederate widow's home, or the Pauley Center we now call it. And like I say, this will be an experiment. We will start and see how it goes. Should we not be able to finish either because of the wind or simply because there are a lot of bags of wishes out there, whatever remains will be similarly disposed. And let's go try this out.
Yeah.